People, what's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? I'm a married mother of two, and I attend adult parties when my husband is at work. I'm 36, have been married for 12 years, have two daughters, and for the past year and a half I've been cheating on my husband. I go to adult parties a few times every month while he's at work and my kids are at school. I love it. It's changed my life completely, and I feel no regret or remorse for anything. Backstory: when I hit my mid-30s, I was very bored and unhappy. I can't say why unless it's that I was tired of just being a wife and a mother. Everything I've read online says this kind of thing is normal and that lots of women go through it. I wasn't clinically depressed or anything, but I felt like something important was missing from my life. Hubby spotted this and did everything right. He did everything that men are meant to do in situations like this. He suggested taking classes, enrolling in a master's degree, taking up new hobbies, hosting a book club, getting a part-time job. He took me on a couple of nice holidays. He took us out to dinner regularly, so I wouldn't have to cook. Whatever else I can say about hubby, he is a wonderful man and I'm lucky to have him, but nothing he did made the slightest difference to my feelings. And, yes, I know this all makes me spoiled and entitled. Enter my friend Amy. We met years ago through a mothers and toddlers group, and we've been friends ever since. We have lunch every week, our husbands golf together, and we're just disgustingly typical of suburban middle-class housewives. During one lunch in June of 2014, Amy suggested that I come with her the next day to a party. A party in the daytime. A party where people would be, banging. I'm presenting it like she sprang this on me out of the blue, but that's misleading. For a couple of months before this, Amy had been bringing up extramarital relations in conversation. She'd talked about this friend or that acquaintance who was supposed to be cheating. She'd asked if I thought I could ever cheat, what it would feel like to cheat, why people cheat, and just generally wore the subject to death as far as I was concerned. Apparently, it had all been building to this. Amy had found a website about a group that held adult parties in the area and had been desperate to go. She'd asked another of our friends, but the friend, Barbara or B, wouldn't go unless I went too. The party was basically a mixer that they held once a month for novices to meet regulars. Men had to pay a fee to enter. Couples paid a smaller fee. Women went for free. I agreed to go, but it wasn't about banging at that point. It was just about the fun, the silliness, of going to a sexy party with the girls while our hubbies were at work. I didn't plan on having relations with anyone. In fact, when I thought about the kind of men who went to these parties, I envisioned balding, mustachioed fat guys in polyester. I thought we'd go, get drunk and laugh ourselves sick at all the losers. But I'm not going to lie here. I was also excited about the idea of doing something wild without my hubby around. On my way home from lunch, I bought a pair of hold-up stockings to wear. Hubby always went crazy for stockings, but to be honest, I just thought they were too much trouble. Like lingerie, they were reserved for his birthday or anniversaries. Stockings had never really been for me, if that makes sense, but when I bought them, I felt so excited. I was going to wear stockings, and my husband wouldn't be there. Next day, I dug out my best black lacy lingerie, put on the stockings, put a nice dress over it, and went to meet Amy and Barbara. We were all nervous and giggling like schoolgirls. I think if one of us had got cold feet, we all would, and that would have been that. But somehow, we all made it to the venue, which was a large but very ordinary suburban house. The parties are run by a lady who goes by her initials, so I'll call her Carol. She looks like she's in her 50s, tall, buxom, and she carries off the big-boned blonde aesthetic to a T. She obviously recognized us for the nervous newbies we were and was very kind. She spoke to us at length and explained that she hosts afternoon parties 3 or 4 times a month, versus 2 or 3 times a week for the evening parties. The afternoon parties are her housewife specials meant for people whose family obligations keep them tied up in the evenings. Once a month, they have a special mixer party for total newbies, and that was what I was attending. There were 7 women and 11 men at this party. The youngest woman looked to be in her late 20s. The others ranged from mid-30s, me, A and B, to around late 40s. The men were not Greek gods. Fabio was not in attendance that day, but they weren't disgusting creeps either. Polyester was nowhere to be seen, and the only man who was bald and rather fat was also amazingly charming. There was a main area where people could meet and socialize and hook up, and then rooms upstairs if people wanted privacy. So, we drank wine and played some games that involved removing clothing as a forfeit. It was the most tremendous fun and so very exciting. I wound up sitting on a couch in my lingerie while a bare older man sat beside me. When he asked if he could put his hand on my leg, I let him. It was the first time since I met my husband that someone else had held me. I'm sure most of you think I'm amoral and horrible, but I'm not totally lacking in self-awareness. As fun and exciting as it was, I had butterflies and terrible nerves. I knew I was on the verge of cheating on my husband. Up to this point, I could rationalize the things I'd done as not really counting. Being bare around other people, even letting a man hold me, wasn't really cheating. I remember looking around the room to see what my friends were doing. Amy was sat between a man and a woman, fully bare and grinning like the Cheshire Cat. Barbara was half bare sitting on some man's knee. I remember that I decided that I absolutely wouldn't go any further, but the man beside me must have spotted my nerves because he put his hand on my arm and reassured me that I wasn't obligated to do anything unless I wanted to, and that no one would object if I used the magic word no, or if I didn't want to take anything further. For some reason, that was what convinced me that I should go further. I can't exactly explain it, but that act made me feel safe enough to go further, and suddenly I really wanted to go further. I took off my inner as a forfeit, and the man beside me, I never found out his name, asked if he could feel my jugs. Of course I said yes. One thing led to another, and I did it with him. We didn't even go to one of the private rooms. We just did it in front of everyone. It didn't last long, but at the time it seemed like the best I'd ever had. Afterwards, I was ready for what I knew would come: guilt. I expected to drown in a nauseating wave of remorse, regret, and guilt. I had cheated on hubby. While my babies were at school and my wonderful husband was working hard to pay for the house I lived in, food I ate, and clothes I wore, I was banging in public with a man I'd met 45 minutes earlier. But guilt never came. I felt better than I'd ever felt. My only regret was that I hadn't done this years earlier. I went home, had a shower, picked up my girls from school, and made dinner. When hubby came in, I kissed him with the same lips that, 5 hours earlier, had been wrapped around another man's dong. I didn't feel guilty at the time, and I don't feel guilty now. I had been scared that I'd be so racked with shame that I'd pounce on hubby as soon as he walked through the door and confess what I'd done. Well, I pounced on him all right. After the girls went to bed, we did it on the couch in our sitting room. I even kept on the stockings I'd worn earlier that day. To understand the significance of this, you need to know that our intimate life had been dwindling since we got married. Before we got married, we did it all the time. After we got married, it slowed to a few times a month. After I had our second girl, it was rare for it to be once a month. The fault in this is all mine. I didn't want to do it. I don't know why. My husband still tried to initiate it, but 9 times out of 10 I shut him down immediately. To the extent I feel guilty about my marriage, all the guilt is about how I treated my husband in the past, not for sleeping with other men. Poor hubby thought all his Christmases had come at once. For the next 3 weeks, I was a fixture at Carol's daytime parties. Amy came with me to one, but the others I went alone. The party was the highlight of my week. Hubby would go to work. I'd get the girls off to school. I'd spend the morning getting ready and making myself look perfect. Then I'd put on some lingerie and something sexy and head to the venue. The first party I'd gone to was a mixer meant to introduce novices to the whole concept. The other parties were different. Some were themed, there were fewer games, and, although people were respectful, it was a lot more adventurous than the first party. Over the next 3 weeks, I had done it with 5 men, including the fat, bald, rather plain man who had been so charming at the first party. He might not have looked like much, but his personality went a long way, and he was scarily good at eating pie. Every time I went to a party, it made me excited for days afterwards. My intimate life with my husband went from once a month to at least 3 times a week. In the past, on the rare occasions when we got intimate, there were a lot of things I wouldn't do, but now I did them all enthusiastically. Sleeping with all these other people made me appreciate my intimate life with my hubby. I threw away all my tights and replaced them with stockings, proper ones, not hold-ups. I wore lingerie every day, and I made sure that my husband knew I was wearing it. When he was at work, we'd exchange dirty emails and texts, which we'd never done before. I joined a gym and decided to get a yummy mummy body. In a 1.5 years since I began attending these parties, my life has improved immeasurably, and so has hubby's. He's happier. I'm happier. I've attended a groupie party at which I got banged by 6 men consecutively. Girl-only parties at one of which I slept with both A and B, which was funny and awkward, and at another of which Carol used a strappy. A special party with another girl and maybe a dozen men. So messy and so much fun. I even went to a TV admirer's party where I got blowy from a pretty blonde TV while a large black man was pounding her. Scooby-Doo style. Imagine my disappointment when the black man declined to sleep with me because he only likes TVs. On a couple of occasions, I managed to make it to evening parties when hubby was away overnight, and I'd been able to send the girls to their grandparents. I even made a new friend, Deborah, who works as a solicitor. Every few weeks, she puts on lingerie and stockings under her suit, sneaks out of the office to attend a party and bangs, sometimes with me, sometimes with men, sometimes with both, in the main room before sneaking back to her office. Since I'm being truthful here, I'll make another confession. The deceit makes me excited. I love the thrill of deceiving my husband about what I'm doing. A few months ago, hubby and I threw a dinner party. I invited Deborah and her husband. I can't even describe the excitement as I looked at my friends around the table, Amy, Barbara, and Deborah, and thought about the secret we shared. I know they felt the same way. Our husbands were all oblivious, but I had done it with each of their wives. To date, I have done it with 54 men, 11 women, 3 TVs, and 1 pre-op TS, and I don't plan to stop anytime soon. While my husband is slaving away to provide for me, I'm having these wild adventures with random strangers. As if that wasn't bad enough, I get off on the lies. I have no regrets, no remorse, and no guilt. In fact, I think hubby's doing pretty well out of the deal. At this point, I'm happy to indulge any fantasy or desire he has. We've had action more times in the last 18 months than in the rest of our relationship combined. He doesn't know what I'm doing, so by definition he can't be hurt by it. And yet I know I should feel bad. I'm not a sociopath. I'm capable of feeling remorse, guilt, and shame. I just don't feel it over this. My friends A and B sometimes talk about how they cope with the guilt and how they sometimes feel like the fun is outweighed by the shame. I can't relate in any way. For me, it's all fun. I love every minute of it, and I know that most people will think that it makes me a horrible, selfish, amoral person who cares more about getting banged than about her family's well-being. There might be some truth in it, but I can't change how I feel. That's my secret. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. My girlfriend cheated on me with my best friend, so I got with his wife and her youngest child might be mine. A few years ago, I met Mark, a guy I quickly became close friends with. I considered him my best friend, a real bro, or so I thought. We spent a lot of time together, and everything seemed great. At the time, he was engaged to the woman who would later become his wife. They got married the year after I met them, and before long, they had a child. Fast forward to about a year and a half ago, I was living with my girlfriend of 3 years. One day, while we were home together, she went out to run a few errands, leaving her laptop open with the browser still running. I figured I'd shut it down, but decided to check her tabs first, just in case she had unsaved work. One of them had an email account still logged in. That's when I saw them. Emails with subject lines like, "Miss you, can't wait to see you again," and "Do you like this?" My gut dropped. As I opened them, I realized she was cheating on me. Then I saw the pictures. One email thread had a guy sending her explicit photos of himself. And in one of them, I recognized the face. It was Mark. She had been sending him pictures too. I had no idea how long it had been going on, but from what I could see, their emails spanned a few months. And who knows how much she had deleted. I had been cheated on before, but this was different. This wasn't just another girl messing around. It was my best friend betraying me. I could get over a cheating girlfriend and move on, but this cut deep. I forwarded copies of the emails to myself, erased any trace of what I'd done, then shut her laptop off. When she got home a couple of hours later, she noticed it was off, and I just casually told her I'd turned it off since I didn't know when she'd be back. But in my head, all I could think was, she was probably with Mark. I hadn't seen any signs before, and for the next few days, I kept acting normal. But inside, I was stewing. I didn't want to just confront them and walk away. This was more than betrayal. It was personal. Telling Mark's wife and dumping my girlfriend didn't feel like enough. So, after hours of thinking, I came up with a plan. I was going to sleep with Mark's wife. If he could do it to me, why shouldn't I do it to him? I had the proof, and I figured I could use it to get close to her. She was attractive, though I'd never thought about her that way before. But things had changed. I wasn't just looking for revenge, I was curious. After being cheated on so many times, I wanted to know what it felt like to be on the other side. 2 weeks later, on my day off, I went to Mark's house under the pretense of returning something I'd borrowed. I knew he was at work, their kid was in school, and his wife, who was a stay-at-home mom, thanks to Mark's income, would likely be home. When she answered the door, I asked if Mark was home, even though I knew he wasn't, handed her the item, and started some small talk. Then I casually asked if I could use the bathroom. A minute later, I was inside their house, still chatting with her. She offered me a drink, so we moved to the kitchen. After finishing my drink, I shifted the conversation to her marriage, asking how things were between her and Mark. She said everything was great. That's when I threw out a comment about how Mark had seemed off lately, even though I hadn't noticed anything before discovering the emails. She just shrugged it off. Then, I pulled out my phone. I opened one of the saved emails and started reading it aloud in a sarcastic tone, watching her reaction. She looked confused at first, then silent, then horrified. I showed her the explicit messages, the pictures, and finally asked if the guy in them looked familiar. I told her everything, how I found out, what my girlfriend had been doing behind my back. And then I showed her my girlfriend's pictures too. She broke down crying. I hugged her, held her, comforted her. And when she calmed down a little, I looked into her eyes and kissed her. She hesitated at first, but I didn't stop. After a few moments, she kissed me back. One thing led to another, and soon, we were in their bedroom. I had slept with his wife. And that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, I kept in contact with her, and before long, we were meeting up regularly. About a month in, we stopped using protection. A few months later, she was pregnant. We didn't really talk about it. I just went with the flow. Meanwhile, I kept up the act with Mark and my girlfriend, pretending nothing was wrong. But deep down, I couldn't shake the question, why did he do this to me? Eventually, though, I stopped caring. My relationship with my girlfriend fell apart, and we broke up. Mark's wife, on the other hand, kept pretending everything was fine too. Earlier this year, she gave birth. The baby has a lot of my features. It could be mine, could be his. But newborns don't always resemble anyone clearly, so who knows? I still see her, though I doubt she'll ever leave Mark. He makes way more money than I do, and let's be real, that's probably what my ex saw in him too. As for the kid, I don't feel any strong need to be involved. Getting in the middle of this would just make a mess of everything, and honestly, I'm not even sure how I feel about Mark's wife outside of the fun we are having. It's been great, but beyond that, there's not much. I don't exactly feel proud of what I did, but I also don't feel bad. Mark deserved it. I know I'm not the person I used to be, but revenge this sweet? It felt damn good. Does that make me the bad guy? Maybe, but I don't think it's that black and white. Story 3. My girlfriend of 2 years broke up with me because of my size. I had recently gotten the chance to take my relationship a step further with my girlfriend. I've always been self-conscious of my size, 2 inches when soft and 4 when upright. And also it was my very first time, so I was extremely nervous as to what would happen. But with the help of some random people on the internet, I built up some self-esteem and went for it. It was going well. I was giving her a good time, and she said it was my turn. Then proceeds to reveal. She looked shocked, then disappointed, and started to laugh. She frigging started to laughing. I knew that this was not her first time, but I wasn't sure the size of her last partner. I was trying not to break down from embarrassment. I must have hidden it well, because she still did her thing. After about 5 minutes, she kinda just stopped. She told me that she needed to go somewhere, and dipped out really fast. There I am, sitting on my bed, with a flood of emotions flowing through my head. Mostly sadness, and shame, I guess. But whatever. I cried my way through it. I ended up playing video games and drinking for the first time in forever. It was not my best night. Fast forward to the next day, and I start getting messages from our friend group about my size. Sarcastic comments about how huge I was. Whatever. I shrugged it off and pushed through it. It hurt, but screw it, right? The last 2 messages were what broke me. One of her close friends, who never liked me, put it as heard your dong is as small as your IQ. Wait till basically everyone in school hears this. I don't know why it was that one that broke me. I'm a relatively smart person, but it was just so diminishing to my self-esteem that I didn't go to school for the next 3 days. When I finally went back, only because I was backing up on work, I was approached by my girlfriend, and she privately told me she wanted to head out separate ways. It was like an anvil being dropped on my heart. We had been together for a while, and I thought it was going great, but I guess not. I hear since then she has already found a new boyfriend, and I have basically been shunned among our old friend group. I'm sad, lonely, and defeated. I really don't know what to frigging do. Story 4. I cheated on my husband only 2 months after our wedding, and I never intend to tell him. Early on in our relationship, we were long distance, and it was rough on both of us. We both cheated on one another, although my cheating was longer and more extensive. After we moved in together, he found a confession journal of mine. Why I didn't padlock the damn thing, I'll never know. Read it, confronted me, and also told me about his indiscretion. There was crying and a few days of bewilderment, but we got over it. After getting very drunk at my best friend's wedding in 2006, I had a one-night stand with a friend of the bride who was just coming off a divorce. Damn, I played it off in my head as if I was doing a public service for the guy, getting him back on the track of actually like himself, which did happen, actually. He went on to be a major player in a successful gubernatorial campaign and ended up copping a job in the administration. However, after my walk of shame in the morning, I told myself no more. I wasn't going to do this to anymore, and I was going to turn over a new leaf. So, I moved in with him. There was the thing with the journal, and then nothing. He proposed, and we ended up getting married in 2009. 2 months after our wedding, I dropped my newly minted husband off at the airport to go away for a conference. Since I had driven to a major city to do this, I looked up a friend who lived in the city to hang out and catch up. We'll call him Dan. 2 things about Dan. He's like a gentleman's gentleman. He opens doors, scoots you into your seat, and pays for everything. Chivalry is not dead in his eyes. Second, he towers over my 5 feet 9 inches height with his 6 feet 5 inches height. He's the only person I've ever met that makes me feel dainty. Either way, we hang out, talk, eat, drink a crap ton of alcohol. Driven to confess by the ethanol, Dan blurts out how he hasn't had physical relations in over a year and is beginning to doubt himself with women and has even tried to think about guys. I make the appropriate soothing noises, and the evening goes on. We drink even more alcohol, including stopping on the way back to his apartment to pick up tonic for G&Ts. And once we get back to the apartment, we continue to chat. Dan had been unable to come to our wedding because of a work commitment, so I had actually brought the DVD with our wedding pictures on it to show him. That's right, I was showing him my wedding pictures when things got nasty. I was sitting on his lap, because of no other chairs in his bedroom, and realized that I was wearing garters and stockings because they were pressed into him. One thing led to another, and all of a sudden, I was on the floor in front of his fireplace. Things moved to bed eventually, and I'm pretty sure between the two of us, we woke up both his roommates. I later found out that it was the first time he had ever received blowy. He had just turned 29, and also his first time doing backdoor stuff. In my strange brain, I was kind of proud of all this, and very glad that he felt so much better about his sexuality and his prowess with women. Oh, and let me tell you, Redditors, in his year off, he had not lost his skill. The 3 or 4 times we did it that night was frigging fantastic. God, it was so good. However, on the drive back home the next morning, I had an attack of conscience. He'd already sent me some lurid texts and one photo of his dong. I flipped out on him. I'm a married woman. You can't be sending me crap like that, and on in that fashion. It was pretty horrible of me. I told him not to text me until I figured out my brain a little better. And that brings us up to today, my friends. I've somehow managed to not tell my husband, keep up the friendship with Dan, and I have absolutely no intention of ever telling my husband. It would do nothing but hurt him. And, if I'm being honest with myself, sleeping with Dan was a public service, and I had been faithful for over 3 years. Mainly the reason I'm confessing is that I'm weakening again, and I'm trying to figure out if I can see Dan again. I'm a bad girl. Story 5. I am having an affair with my wife's mother. I know what I'm doing is terrible. I'm not writing this for approval. I just need to get it off my chest. My wife and I are both 19. We've been together for 3 years and got married 5 months ago. Despite our age, our relationship was real. We faced a lot of challenges together, especially dealing with her abusive father, who never liked me. But we pushed through. And even though it won't seem like it now, I truly love her. Her mother, who's 40, and I have always had a great relationship. I admired her deeply, not just because she survived unimaginable things, but because she remained the kindest, most optimistic person I'd ever met. A literal angel. My wife, despite being the daughter, was extremely protective of her. It was like she saw her mother's innocence and wanted to shield it. 3 months ago, she moved in with us. We live in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, so she slept on our uncomfortable couch without complaint. At first, nothing felt different, but as time went on, things slowly began to change. With my wife working long hours, her mother and I spent more time together. We discovered shared interests, anime, certain books, TV series, things my wife never really cared about. What started as casual bonding turned into something deeper. She began opening up more about her past, and my admiration for her only grew. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to feel loved. Then, I started noticing her physically. She's a thicker woman, something I've always secretly been drawn to, even though my wife is petite. It felt like she began dressing more comfortably around me. Shorts instead of pajama pants, going barefoot instead of wearing socks. Little things started getting to me. The way her legs looked soft and smooth. How cute her slightly chubby feet were. These details, things I never would have paid attention to before, suddenly consumed my thoughts. It got to the point where I was masturbating to her. A week ago, she came home crying. I rushed to comfort her, holding her as she sobbed on the couch. At first, she wouldn't tell me what was wrong. She was embarrassed. But I kept reassuring her, telling her it was okay. Finally, she admitted it. She felt fat, old, and undesirable. She'd seen a group of guys laughing at her, and it crushed her. Hearing that broke me. I started crying too, trying to convince her that she was none of those things. That she was beautiful. That she deserved to feel wanted. And then something in me just took over. I kissed her. I expected her to push me away, to slap me, to scream at me. But she didn't. She kissed me back. It escalated quickly, and before I knew it, we were full on doing it. Afterward, she broke down, overwhelmed with guilt, and decided to get a hotel instead of staying with us. I understood. But since then, every time my wife leaves for work, I drive to her hotel. We keep sleeping together. And now, I crave her in a way that's almost unbearable. Every little thing about her, the way she laughs, even her so-called flaws, has become intoxicating to me. And I know she wants me just as much. She's more passionate with me than my wife has ever been. I know this has to end. Soon. I've fallen into a dark, terrible hole, and I have no one to blame but myself. But now that I'm here, I don't even know how to begin to climb out. Story 6. I had a physical relation with my stepsister, got her pregnant, and paid for the termination process. Years ago, my stepsister and I constantly found ourselves with a lot of idle time alone together. We'd come home, and it would just be us for a few hours. Both of our parents, her dad, my mom, traveled a lot, so we often had the house to ourselves on the weekends. We'd throw parties, have friends over. For the most part, we got along. Late one night following our party, she came into my room just as I was getting into bed and asked if she could sleep on the floor. A friend of hers had gotten wicked drunk, puked, and passed out in her bed. There were people sleeping on the couches and in the guest room. She had no place else to sleep. I offered to give her my bed and sleep on the floor. She told me to move over and crawled into bed with me. We talked for a little while, laughing about the events of the evening, and smoked a bowl. Both of us had struck out with our respective crushes. They actually ended up hooking up and leaving together. I was making fun of her crush because he was a frigging tool, and she made fun of mine for being a superficial bish. At one point, she dropped the pipe as I was passing it back to her. Ashes spilled all over the sheets. She got up and wiped them off while I teased her for being clumsy. She was wearing a t-shirt and these little pajama pants that made her peaches look great. She got back in bed. I packed another bowl. She was moving around, trying to get comfortable, when she slapped the sheets back. I had a raging stiffy immediately. She giggled and laughed at first. Then she made a comment about my size. She flicked it playfully. It responded. "It's not you," I said. "I know. It was." She turned away from me, curled up a little. Her peaches was hanging out of her pajama pants and pointing at me. Every time one of us shifted, we slowly moved closer to each other. After a minute or so of silence, she said, "We could do stuff." "We could," I said. "But we shouldn't. Should we?" "Probably not." By this point, I was almost touching her peaches. She moved and felt me. "We're not blood," she said. We talked about it a bit, about how we could do stuff, some stuff, and how we shouldn't do some other stuff. No banging, she said. Just fun stuff. And no kissing, I said. That would be too weird. We had established the rules. She turned and we made out. She was a little rough. We were both pretty inexperienced and was doing it all wrong. I tried to correct her, and that's when she said she wanted to watch me. I said I wanted to watch her. So, we watched each other. We didn't cuddle or anything after, and she was gone by the time I woke up the next morning. I didn't see her all day. That night, after all of our friends had gone, she came home and found me swimming in the pool. We talked for a few minutes, but not about the night before. She went inside, said she'd be up in her room doing stuff. There was a look she gave that I would come to know. That night we gave each other blowy, and that was what we mostly did every now and then. At first, it was only when our parents were gone, but then it became more frequent. Eventually, it was almost every day after school. The first time we did it was an accident. She was giving me a massage on my bed, and when I flipped so she could work my front, she saw it. She sat down and teased me. I was poking out and just kind of slipped in. She asked if she should stop. I said she should. She asked if I wanted her to stop. I said no. From there, banging became a regular thing. There was a period of about 2 weeks where we did it every day. That was when we started kissing and sleeping in the same bed. That was when she got pregnant. She didn't tell me at first. I noticed something was different about her. She was getting screwed up almost every day. She denied it, but I think she was trying to terminate. Once she told me, I offered to do whatever she wanted. She asked for the money, which I gave without hesitation. Her friend took her to the clinic. She told her it was some random guy she had hooked up with. We stopped fooling around after that. Things were only awkward for like a week or so before we got back to our original step-bro-sis relationship. I started dating a girl she didn't like. So, she dated a guy I didn't like. We were passive-aggressively trying to make each other jealous. We're both dating someone the other doesn't like now. We only see each other a few times a year, but when we do, we're careful, take precautions. Nobody knows except you. Reddit. Story 7. My wife and I had a groupie for the first time, and it ruled. Over the past few months, my wife and I discussed the possibility of exploring a new experience together by meeting another couple. We had many in-depth conversations and covered a wide range of topics, as we feel very secure in our marriage of over 10 years. We had previously had a positive experience with another woman, as mentioned in my previous posts. A couple of weeks ago, I came home from work to find that my wife had downloaded an app designed to help couples meet other couples, which felt like the first concrete step we'd taken in this direction. My wife is incredibly attractive, and it wasn't long before we started receiving interest from many seemingly normal, attractive people. We eventually connected with a local couple and did our research to make sure they were genuine people. After confirming everything, we arranged to meet at a bar for drinks and then headed to a hotel. I was initially unsure of how it would go, but the experience turned out to be much more comfortable than I expected. Each couple started by spending time with their own partner, engaging in intimate activities, and the night naturally evolved into a group setting. I'm straight, so I was not involved in any male-male contact, and everyone was respectful of each other's boundaries. I'm not sure what I thought I would feel when I saw another dude banging my wife, but my God, she was enjoying it so much that I couldn't help but be excited. Really excited. I had a great time, and I really enjoyed watching my wife with both of the others. It was so cool. We continued for about 75 minutes, I think, and eventually just kind of collapsed into a sweaty heap. We laid there for a while and then got dressed, sipped on some water, and just hung out, like we were at a weird coffee shop or something. We went our separate ways and have continued the conversation via text messages. It was just so much fun and went better than I could have imagined. My one post-event concern was that intimacy between me and my wife would be less enjoyable after the fact. This has turned out to be the absolute opposite of what has happened. We have done it multiple times since the groupie, and man, it's better than it ever has been. Anyway, I don't have any friends who I am close enough with to tell about stuff like this, so I'm telling you, anonymous internet person. 10 out of 10, would recommend only if you are incredibly secure in your relationship and both of you are equally enthusiastic. Dragging a less than willing partner into something like this would kill a relationship. It worked well for us, but your mileage may vary. Story 8. I have gay relations with my father-in-law. My wife and I married in the spring of 2010, and we have a great marriage on the surface. However, that is not the case. My wife cheated on me a little after a year of marriage, but we got through it. Then it happened again, and I asked her to leave our home. and she temporarily moved back in with her father. My wife would try to contact me and try to work things out, but I refused to answer. She texted me one day saying she needed to come by the house to get her clothes, and I finally responded and told her I would leave her stuff outside, and she could come pick it up so I wouldn't have to see her. She disagreed because we don't live in the best neighborhood, and it's likely her stuff could get stolen. She told me her father would come by to pick her clothes up, and I agreed. My wife's father is openly gay. He and his wife divorced when my wife was a child because of it. My wife's mother left and was never heard from again. When my father-in-law came to pick up her clothes, he also asked for her laptop, which I had no idea where it was. He helped me search for it, and once he found it, he left. The next day I got a text message from him saying he needed to get the laptop's charger, so I told him he could pick it up tomorrow. When he came over, he seemed a little off to me. He asked me how I was doing, and I told him the truth, that I was devastated and felt completely betrayed by his daughter. This was the first time I had ever discussed how I honestly felt about everything. I broke down and started crying. Her father gave me a hug, and I didn't feel so lonely anymore. I don't know why, but I had the urge to kiss him. I don't consider myself gay, but for some reason I wanted to kiss a man, so I did. He seemed surprised, but strangely, he didn't pull away. We kissed for at least half an hour. For the first time in months, I didn't feel so alone. I knew his flagpole was up, and I knew I was too. So one thing led to another, and we ended up banging. We have done it 7 times since November 2012, and no one knows. I have legitimate feelings for him, and he says he feels the same. My wife, who I am still legally married to, still lives with her father and has no idea. We haven't divorced because she refuses to sign the papers and completely ignores it when I bring up the topic. She tells me she wants to be with me, but I don't feel the same anymore. I just needed to finally rant and get this off my chest. Story 9. I'm catfishing my fiancé, and I think he's falling for her. The thing is, my fiancé is absolutely the love of my life. We are, in fact, perfect for one another. Except that I myself am far from perfect. One of my likings in bed involves third wheel mode. It is something I have been into for many years now, and he fully supports me. Recently, we wanted to actually go forward and do this. We have been trying to find a female to be interested in both of us. We have tried so many resources and dating apps, and even went as far as almost soliciting a cash-only companion while in Vegas. We didn't go for it, though. We have been on OkCupid and Tinder and have had many matches, but it's a very slow process, and a lot of girls don't know what they're looking for when they're seeking out a couple. Now, this next part is where I took things too far. I wish I could tell you that the situation was really premeditated and thought out, but instead, I thought with the wrong part of my body. I made an OkCupid account using some models' pictures, then matched with us, and from there, I started talking and texting my fiancé. I didn't even try to become a different person. I texted just as I would and responded just as I would. And so naturally, because we get along so well, he became very interested in her. I sent more pictures of this really cute model, and he acted out everything I wanted in my fantasy. Desiring another person, getting excited over them, and thinking about them. Last night, he slept with his phone by his side. He absolutely hates his phone, just in case she texted him. Because of this kind of behavior from him, I myself have been so excited, and we've been having the wildest and craziest bang we've ever had. Many times a day. So now, I'm addicted, and I'm almost getting everything I wanted, but I am deceiving him, and I hate that. It has only been about a week, and I was ready to come clean with him, except that I realized he has fallen for her. And now, in order to confess to him, I have to break his heart and tell him that she is not real. I know he will forgive me because he is understanding, but I will be killing the spark he has and the excitement he has when you can't stop thinking about someone and feel so amazing, like you're walking on clouds, because that somebody likes you too. I feel terrible, and I know how screwed up and selfish this is. Story 10. I accidentally got a classmate of mine sent to gay counseling. I've been lurking on this sub for a while, and realized I have a confession of my own to share. Back in high school, around 2011, I had a classmate in my sophomore ceramics class. Let's call him Jerry. We got along pretty well. We were both into dubstep, back when that was a thing, LOL, and other nerdy stuff. We weren't super close, but we'd chat on Facebook and Skype about music and video games. One day, during a random Skype call, I did something incredibly stupid. For reasons I can't fully explain, I sent Jerry a link and told him, check out this sick link. If you want to know what it is, and honestly, you're better off not knowing. It was one of those infamous shock sites from back in the day, a looping gif of, well, let's just say it involved explicit gay content set to You Spin Me Right Round by Dead or Alive. Jerry, having no clue what it was, clicked the link while we were still on the call. I heard the song start playing through his speakers, followed by "Dude, what the heck?" and then silence. He immediately ended the Skype call. I tried messaging him to see what happened, but he went offline and never responded. I was laughing at the time, thinking it was just a harmless prank, and figured I'd ask him about it in class the next day. But the next day, Jerry wasn't in class. I assumed he was sick. Then a week went by, then two. He was completely offline. No Skype, no Facebook. I started to get a little concerned. Eventually, I managed to get in touch with him. That's when I found out what had happened. Apparently, right as he clicked the link, one of his parents walked into his room. They completely freaked out, and things spiraled from there. Jerry told me that his parents sent him to gay conversion therapy and banned him from using the internet for a while. I was floored. I apologized, but he was understandably pissed. We ended up in the same auto shop class a year later, but we never really talked again. At some point, he also unfriended me on Facebook. I don't know what happened to Jerry after that, but if by some wild chance you're reading this, man, seriously, I'm sorry. I never meant for that to happen. Story 11. I did it in my roommate's bong and have no regrets. This was a good many years ago, but I still reminisce about it fondly sometimes after running a quick errand to Personal Pound Town. I am here to admit my wrongdoing and acknowledge my guilt, but I have no need to alleviate my conscience. When this happened, I made the risky move to rent an apartment with my somewhat new girlfriend, her best friend, and her best friend's boyfriend. Two couples living together in a two-bedroom apartment was an obvious recipe for success, so I jumped at the opportunity. We all enjoyed the common interest of partaking in the jazz cabbage, so it was not uncommon for our walls to be filled with the sounds of laughter and any number of Mario parties. As is the case with most horror stories, we started off as a perfect family. Then one day, the drama happened. It was a slow burn that had built up from the typical teenager drama BS. Cleaning, chores, food, money, girls had falling out, blah blah BS. Crap just turned south, as it so often does in these types of scenarios. There is a long story here as well, but I don't want to tell it as it is not entertaining and doesn't end with me being crowned eternal king of chads, name changed, smoking devices. When they moved out, they locked our 3-month-old kitten in a closet and locked it by driving a nail into the lock, in case you need a reason to hate them. Things were bearable, until eventually someone felt they needed to kick it up a notch. We kept a mini fridge in our bedroom due to aforementioned food BS, along with a small stock of plastic water bottles. One day I grabbed a bottle and noticed that the seal had already been broken. I took a deep sniff and could detect the distinct smell of something that wasn't water because water doesn't smell, all unless it's dropping onto warm concrete. I checked the rest of the water bottles in the fridge, and after I found their seals intact, decided to do some probing. I let my girlfriend know of the situation and began my research. Less than a week later, another water bottle's seal magically broke, without any interference from the good side, us. There were more clues and details, but you can just trust my super sleuth skills. I always assumed that the smell was due to eye drops, because of the scene in the movie Wedding Crashers where they do this to give someone diarrhea. The movie was a favorite of Chad's, and he wasn't the most creative type. These are just the mad musings of a former champion still living in the throes of victory, though, so they can't be confirmed as true. Once my mind was made up that revenge was in order, I devised a plan that seemed fitting for the crime, and also that I thought was just frigging hilarious. I truly haven't gotten over this. My grandkids will sit on Pappy's knee and hear the story of a song of ice and batter. I'm contemplating a commemorative tattoo, but struggle to find a design that would still be tasteful. His preferred smoking lamp was a nice 18-inch tall zone. He would always fill it with ice cubes from a purposefully bought mini ice cube tray, so as to get ice cubes dispersed as much as possible throughout. One day while he was out, I emptied the ice tray and refilled it with the help of my girlfriend and about 100 million of my potential younglings. I topped it off again with water and put it back in the freezer to await its final destination. I was very busy the next few days. I was too afraid that if I looked at either one of their faces, I would crap myself trying to hold in laughter, and the whole gambit would be exposed. Once I finally felt that the giggles had passed, I ventured back into their room to investigate. There inside the bong, staring back at me with the pure white essence of innocence, was a fat glob of my smoothie. More was visible spread throughout the rest of the glass switchbacks, and even more was brewing due to my building feeling of complete alphaness. It was a rare occasion for his smoking pieces to get a bath, so I can confidently say I tainted his lungs for a minimum of at least a month. I was very thankful he never got pregnant. It has been more than 8 years now, and I still often think back with a knowing smile and twinkle in my eye. I wonder sometimes if he complains that weed just doesn't have that same taste from when he was younger, or how much time he spent scrubbing my kids off that glass. These are questions I will ask in the afterlife. Until that time, I'll live happily with my memories. On a separate note, in just 30 days I'll be marrying that girl that I moved in with too early all those years ago, and I couldn't possibly be more excited about it. Story 12. I accidentally had a texting relationship with my brother on Reddit, then kept doing it even after I found out. I am a 24-year-old female, and my brother is 27. Around 2 years ago when I first joined Reddit on my old account, I posted to NSFW subreddits a lot. I am fairly confident in my body and didn't mind showing it off at the time. Now that I have a boyfriend, however, my tune has changed on that subject matter. I'd post at least twice a day and get a bunch of messages. One guy kept commenting and messaging me, telling me I was sexy and how much he loved my posts. For some reason, I kept talking to him, and we basically developed a relationship and dirty texted all the time, but we never showed our faces. He was very nice and sweet to me, even when we weren't talking about being intimate. Keep in mind that I was always very private about my identity because I didn't want anyone to blackmail me. I even made up a name and location as to where I lived. I thought it was a bit weird that this guy had the same name as my brother. Although my brother is very good looking and 10 out of 10 would bang if he wasn't my brother and lived in the same state, but figured it was simply a coincidence. For his birthday a few months after we met, he sent me a picture of himself without a shirt on and his magic stick and told me he wished I was there to give him a blowy and asked me if I liked the new tattoo he got for his 25th birthday. But I was in the living room downstairs, celebrating my brother's birthday. His 25th one. It was the same tattoo my brother showed me earlier that day. It was the same bathroom, same shower curtains, same hair products, same perfume, same toothbrush colors, same everything. I was mortified, but I didn't stop. My brother really is a hot guy, and I liked what he had below the equator. I couldn't help myself, so I continued to text with him for a few more months until I told him I had gotten a boyfriend and could no longer do that with him. He understood, and we went our separate ways. The worst part? I still look at his pictures on occasion during my solo sessions. Edit. Yes, this is real. As for the people talking about how we didn't recognize each other by the same house and such, I was in college and lived in a dorm room. It was not the room I had at my parents' house. My brother has a fairly plain room and sheets. I thought it was normal to have only white, black, and navy sheets. We would post the pics on Imager, then send the link in private message. It's quite simple. Story 13. I'm still a proud pillow princess at 61. Just felt like sharing this. I'm a 61-year-old woman. My husband is the same age as I am. We have been together for 26 years, 17 as a married couple. I'm happy to report that I still love my husband and getting pounded by him like nobody's business. That I am his pillow princess. Over the years, our intimate life has only gotten better. He and I have been through so much together. Our bond has taken our chemistry to a level I didn't think was possible. Today, we are a lot less busy than we were a decade ago. We travel together, work out together, foster dogs and cats together. We are best friends, but we also give each other a lot of space. I have my interests and goals, he has his. Spending some time apart just makes our desire burn brighter. And when we're together again, we can barely keep our hands and lips to ourselves. The passion with which he loves me during our bedroom activities is still as intense as it was 26 years ago. My body still craves his touch as it did back then. We still do all kinds of wild and naughty things in bed. I love waking him up in the morning by giving him a blowy. If he wakes up before I do, he'll wake me up by doing the same. We still sneak away into a closet when guests are over. When we're out, he often touches my bum or my thighs, albeit discreetly. His way of letting me know that he has all intentions of using me when we get home. We have both taken good care of ourselves. People often comment that we look like we're in our late 40s. They ask us what our secret is. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's loving and living life to the fullest. Age is only a number. Don't let it get in the way of living your best life. Bang like animals. Keep finding new adventures. Lust for life and for your lover, and you will never grow old. And of course, never ever stop being a pillow princess. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.